こんにちは、Hakon です。今日はもっと日本語を学びます。Hello, my name is Hakon, and today we will learn more Japanese. So, let's do a recap first of all. And this is probably mostly going to be a recap episode. So we are going to just, we have learned all the hiragana at this time. Excuse me. Early morning here, sorry, my throat is a little bit rusty. So let's just go through, and this is for my sake as well, as much as yours. I'm going to try to remember all the hiragana by heart now. So let's see if I can remember all of them. So we have a, I, u, e, o. First five, and the vowels of Japanese. The u, of course, unrounded u sound rather than u. But again, if you do pronounce it like ooh, I'm sure most Japanese people will be fine with it and understand what you're saying. And it just means that they will be able to tell beyond the shadow of a doubt that you are a foreigner, which is fine. And they'll still be very happy that you're trying. Then we have the K line. As you remember last time, I said there might be songs or poems or something like that, but I just remember Akasata na hama yarawa, and that's the order of the Japanese alphabet, as it were, in modern times. So next one, K line, ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. I remember these all last night when I was thinking about them, sort of in my head. Next is the S line. Sa, shi, su, se, so. And I'm doing the voiced ones later, by the way. I'm doing just the regular ones first now. Akasa. The thing is, if you remember the characters of the unvoiced sets, of course, those are all the different characters. When you add a diacritic, you're not remembering a different character. So I'm just going to write down the basic set now. So that's the basic 46 hiragana. So akasa, ta, chi, tsu, te, to, na, ni, nu. Oh, almost wrote the same one twice there. That's supposed to be ne, no, ha, hi. If you remember, hi, very often it's pronounced hi. Hu, he, ho, ma, mi, mu, me, the one that looks like nu, mo, ya, yu, yo, ra, ri, ru, re, ro. And finally, oh, hang on. Yes. I thought I made a mistake there for a moment. Wa, o, So there we have it. That is the basic set, and that actually does fit in on the screen as well. That was lucky. Right, so those are the basic characters. It doesn't look that much, does it, when you see them all on one page like this and you don't add all the diacritic ones. Well, just to quickly go over the diacritics as well, we have what's known as a duckten, which is a little apostrophe-like character. When added to the ka, sa, ta, ha lines, make them voiced. And I do believe actually daku has something to do with voicing, so it's like a voiced character. So if you add it to this line, you get ga, gi, gu, ge, go. And or in some dialects, nga, ni, ngu, nge, ngo, by the way. But basic Japanese, just we can just learn ga, gi, gu, ge, go, which is nice because it also means we distinguish the nga, can distinguish the nga particle by saying nga only when we use the particle as well. We'll get back to that later when we start doing grammar. Sashi suse so becomes za, ji, ju. No, that's not right. It becomes za, ji, zu, zezo. Also za, ji, zu, zezo, depending on context and dialect again. Tachi tsu te to becomes da, ji, zu, de, do. No, sorry. Yes, de, do, yes. Nani ni no, that's the same. The H line, of course, ha, hi, hu, he, ho becomes ba, bi, bu, be, bo when you add the duckten. And that also you can add what's known as the handukten, half duckten, literally. Half voicing marker, I presume something like that it means. And you get pa, pi, pu, pe, po. All of that reminds me of another thing I have to talk about now, and that is aspiration. Yes, this is something that English speakers probably wouldn't know much about at all. In English, when you have a word that has a combination of a K plus a vowel, a T plus a vowel, if there's no, in the case of them, if there's no other consonant before it, if it is a syllable starting with a K, a T, a P, and plus a vowel, the K, the T, and the P, they get a very pronounced puff of breath after the sound. So in English, we would say ka, ki, ku, ke, ko. That's aspirated. But in Japanese, the K's, the T's, and the P's are not aspirated. Excuse me. So it's not ka, it's ka. It's, for an English speaker, those two sounds don't really sound that different. Indeed, there are languages where aspirated and unaspirated sounds are distinguished from each other. They have different meanings. Not distinguished, distinctive is the word I'm looking for. So when you try to pronounce your Japanese, try to, if you hold your hand in front of your mouth, and you can feel whether there's a puff of breath after. So if you say in English word like car, come, cut, you can feel that puff of air on your hand. But if you say it, the Japanese characters or the Japanese syllables, ka, ki, ku, ki, ko, there shouldn't really be that puff of breath on your hand. So ka, ki, ku, ki, ko, ta, chi, tsu, te, to, ha, hi, hu, he, ho, pa, pi, pu, pe, po. It's very hard actually, especially with the P's. Pa, pi, pu, pe, pa, pi, pu, pe, po. It's so hard with the P's that it's almost easier if you say it like a B, but that would be wrong. So yeah, it's unaspirated. It's something to strive for and to work on, but it's very hard to do. But it's easiest with the K's and the T's, but it's harder with the P's, I think. And this is something that is one of those things you may not realize, and it does exist in lots of languages. For instance, in French too, you would have unaspirated K's, for instance. So if you say Monsieur le conducteur, that's unaspirated K's in conducteur. So that's one other thing about the pronunciation. Another thing that is interesting in the pronunciation of Japanese is the sound N, which of course can be different depending on context. So if you have an N coming, I'll just do this in the Romaji. Oh, by the way, Romaji, that's another thing I wanted to talk to you about. Because last time I said, or one of my previous episodes, I said it was called Romaji, and I wrote it like that. But there's a long O there, so it's supposed to be Romaji, and I'll just write that now in hiragana, because we know that now. And that will lead me into another thing as well. When you double some vowels, when you actually write them in the characters, there are different ways of doing that. And when you double an O sound, you don't add another O. And usually only in a handful of words would you actually add another O. In almost every case, you add a U. So Romaji, if I'm supposed to write that in hiragana now, I would say, and then we have, let's see, it's a bit askew now, Roma and Ji. So Ro plus U, U, Ma, Ji, Romaji. And this U, when people write letters from or transliterates Japanese, often you find people would write it like that. So if you see in a text that is transliterated from Japanese a combination O-U, in a lot of cases that is actually supposed to be pronounced as if it's just a long ro sound, so the Romaji. There's no U sound there at all. One could conceive possibly of a few cases, I'm not sure how many there are, where these elements are separate. So now, of course, Romaji is part of the same. This is part of the same element of the word. But if you have a compound word, you can have one that ends in an O sound and starts with a U sound, in which case they would be pronounced O, U, like two separate vowels. I don't have any examples of that, but I will, if I find one, I will tell you. Other doubling of vowels are normal. If you double two R sounds, for instance, that is just in with an extra R. So you have something like Oka-san, for instance. Oka-san. I can't remember what that means now. It is some member of your own family that you would call, or some member of a family that you would call Oka-san. I can't remember which one now. But it's something to do with family relationships, and I can't. I'll go through all the words for that one of these days. Oka-san. I remember last time I said, not last time, I say last time, one of my previous episodes, I said when you double an E, you get usually an E added on rather than another E. Kirei, which means beautiful. Kirei. So it's pronounced like an E. Sometimes some dialects will pronounce it more like an A diphthong. And of course, the reason that the OU combination exists and the reason the EY combination exists is because these did indeed used to be pronounced like diphthongs in Japanese. And diphthongs means you have two different vowel sounds and the vowel glides from one to the other. So we have several of them in English. We have I, oi, ua, ear, air. And they used to have in Japanese, so it used to be kirei, but then it became kirei as a linguistic change. And with the O ones, I suppose, romaji became romaji gradually. So those are just linguistic changes that happen. An E that is doubled is written with an extra E sound. Do I have anything I can think of now? So we have, oh, that's not it's not supposed to be a hook there. Atarashi atarashi, which is a word meaning new. So that's an adjective, sort of. That's another thing I will get back to, by the way, parts of speech. Atarashi, so you just add an E sound after another letter that is either an E or another in from the E column. So we've done R, E, U. Of course, if you double an U sound, you just add another U again. So we have a word like chi plus small u, so you know that means chew. And then we have another u, chew. And then we have go, ku, chugoku. That means China, which basically literally means in the middle, country. So the country in the middle, the kingdom in the middle, which is of course one of the old epithets of China, but that's literally what China means. So it's not just an epithet, it actually is the country's name. Right, so and or of course some of the times that you get a double o is in a word like big, which in Japanese is, oh, forgot this one, oki. That's oki. So we have a double o, and also there's a double e sound there as well, oki. That will be one of the first kanji that we learn, actually. It's quite a simple one. Another thing about doubling is when you have an N. Remember when I told you last time how you double consonants, and I gave you the example of so we have matcha, of course, which is green tea. Sometimes you can see this transliterated, by the way, as matcha, two C's there instead of a T coming extra. That's a matter of taste. It doesn't matter how, but I think the T, actually, to me, that looks better because it tells me how to pronounce it as well. There are different sort of schools of thought there when it comes to that, but I like the transliteration methods that actually tell you how it is pronounced. Oh. Yeah, speaking of tea, I just had to had to take a sip now. This is not green tea, of course. This is, I believe, it's black tea. It's Earl Grey, so it's, if I remember correctly, it's kocha, black tea. Cha meaning, of course, tea. Right, yes, N sounds and N doublings. So if you double an N, I think there's a word, benno. So instead of, you don't use the extra tsu character there when you're doubling an N, you use an N. So, and then it's no. So I think benno, I can't remember what that means now. I think there's a word benno. So no, benno. So when you double it, usually it's then before a syllable with an N character. So that's a little bit different. Another thing I wanted to talk a little bit about is the pronunciation of the character N as well, because this varies depending on the environment. An N before a K or a G becomes pronounced not like an N, but like an ng sound, which is most common in all languages, actually. So if you have something like san kai, which could mean several things, I think. The N is pronounced now like ng, so it's sankai. Also notice how the vowel before an N has a tendency to get nasalized. Sankai. Other times, there is an effect that, no, I'll do it before the, and before a B and a P sound. So we have sen, and then we have pa, senpai. So it's not pronounced senpai or senpai, it's senpai. The N becomes completely an M. So it's pronounced senpai. Now, very often in systems of transliteration, you will find that this is written as senpai. If you do see Japanese words transliterated and there is an N before a P or a B, remember that that N is always supposed to be pronounced like an M. I like transcribing it as an M because to me that makes more sense and there's no way I can confuse that with anything else. So that's another thing. And then there's a word like, not a doubling anymore now, so we have Sensei. Now what happens in this word is that the N is actually, in lots of people's ways of pronouncing Japanese, is actually completely gone. That is to say, it's not completely gone because it's replaced with a nasal vowel. So a Japanese person wouldn't say sensei necessarily, would say sensei. Almost. I'm not very good at doing that yet. So in phonetics, it's S, E, and then you get a nasal U sound almost. Sensei. It's something that's nice to know about, but it's not that important. If you pronounce it sensei, that's fine. People will understand you, certainly, and I'm sure some dialects of Japanese, that is pretty much what they would be saying. But just be aware that sounds do change depending on the phonological context, and this is, of course, common to absolutely all languages as far as I know. And it's a normal thing and it's not scary at all. It's one of those things when you know a language, you don't even hear it because you just think of both the look of a word as a meaning and you think the sound of a word put together as that meaning as well, without even thinking about it. Because the distinctiveness between the words has become just second nature, and that's where you want to be when you learn a language. So, right, I'm just thinking if there's anything else I wanted to say about pronunciation right now, and I can't think of anything. And this is also getting quite a long video now, and I do like to give you bite-sized things. So just to do a little recap then. So today I just went over the characters, and this is what you should be doing as well. If you want to practice the characters, just keep writing them over and over until you know them by heart. That's the first step, writing them in order, and then gradually you should also be able to write words without having to look it up, but that's the next step. Doubling of an O usually means adding a U. And of course, very often that is transliterated like that. I like transliterating it as double O or O with a line across on top. But the thing is that when you do that, you have to be careful to remember that you are writing a U when you write Japanese. So maybe that's one of those where it's an idea to actually use a U in your transliteration so you don't forget to write that character, although it will also be second nature. Doubling of E with an E. Then there was doubling of consonants with a tsu character, and doubling of N's with an N character, and then the pronunciations of N, which could be ng, sankai, senpai, senpai, sensei, sensei. And indeed, in other positions too, you would see the N almost disappear and become just affecting the vowel before it. So like the ubiquitous ending san that you put on almost anything, of course, when you're talking to people or about people. You would use the sort of polite suffix san, and it's lots of people wouldn't even pronounce the N at all at the end. It's sang, sang. It's just a nasalized vowel sang, sang. So, oh yes, the one more thing I wanted to say about say something about was unvoiced vowels. Yes, you might have noticed when I in my introduction say "watashi wa Hakon desu," for instance. So I'll just write that out now. So we have oh, what's that? What? Tashi. And that's a ha, but of course this is a particle, so this is pronounced wa, watashi wa. And I'll just do this in hiragana now. Normally this would have been in katakana. So watashi wa ho, and then it's a u, doubling of the o. Hakon desu. Okay, so what I want to talk about is not silent vowels, but unvoiced vowels. They do seem to be silent when you... So I'll just split these up with letters. This last word there, des is a verb meaning to be. It's not just to be. It's you can't use it for all cases of to be, and we'll get back to that as well when we start a little bit more on grammar and actual texts and sentences and things. And it's one of the most ubiquitous verbs you will encounter in Japanese. Now, of course, this is, if you transcribe it, desu. And many Japanese people would pronounce it as desu. And of course, there is also another thing going on in Japan where you have different styles of talking depending on whether you're a man or a woman, for instance. And a woman is more likely to say desu, and a man is more likely to say des. Now, what's happening there is that the U, when I say des, it's still sort of there, but it's unvoiced. So it's almost disappears because it's almost like you turn into a little whisper. Excuse me. Moshi moshi. So desu. So when you write this phonetically, of course you get this, and then it's like this. And so when you write it phonetically, this shows that the U sound is unvoiced. It's almost like a whisper. Desu, desu, desu. It becomes almost like a little breath at the end of a sentence. And the same can happen in side words. And this usually happens particularly at the end of a word in the case of the U sounds, but in side words and before, I think, T's and I can't remember the exact one, but I know that this one is another one that happens to this. It's kitsu, kitsu, and that is kitsu. That means shoe or shoes. And it's just basically both vowels are almost unvoiced there. Kitsu wa. Kono kitsu wa watashi no kitsu desu. This shoe is my shoe. And this can also happen to the E sound as well. See if I can come up with an example there. Yes. We have hito. This is sort of, yeah. Hito. It's not pronounced hito, of course. Let's put the kutsu. Hito, of course, which is the human being, person, and oops. So that's the phonetic symbol for sh. It's not very well done, that. And then we have the E, which is unvoiced, and then it's T, and I suppose the O sound in Japanese is, I think that's, is that how they write it? I think that's the right one. So that's the O sound. Hito, hito. So the E is sort of there, but it's almost like a whisper and it's hardly audible. And when you do this, of course, in the balance of how you pronounce things, of course, each mora, each syllable still gets the sort of same length of time. Kitsu, kitsu, kutsuwa. So if you're saying kutsu fully, you're still saying kitsu. It's still the same sort of length of time that you are pronouncing things. Now, this is not crucial to know. You can probably get by quite well without it, but it's one of those things to be aware of, again, and something to try to strive for, to be good at, because you will sound more Japanese if you do it properly, and you will also understand Japanese better when you are aware of it, because when people talk and it seems like some letters are just disappearing, it's a little bit harder to keep up unless you know how it works. So, hito, kitsu desu. Watashi wa Hakon desu. So, that's all I wanted to say for now. I might say more about this at some other point. And of course, indeed, we are doing a little bit of repetition from time to time. So, right. I think that's all I need to say today. And thank you for watching again. Domo arigatou gozaimasu. Please, excuse me. Please like, share, subscribe, comment, and join me on Patreon if you like what I do and want to see more of it. And I will see you in the next episode of Learning Japanese. And yeah, sayonara. Bye-bye.